there. My name's Linda Sterry and I work for a charity based in Dundee called Funeral Link, and I'm part of a steering group for a community initiative which we've called Say Something Dundee. And we really aim to encourage people to say something, say a bit more about anything related to death, dying, bereavement and care. And our session today, we're joined today by Lorna and by Michelle, and who'll introduce themselves shortly. But our session today is really part of our Planning Ahead sessions. We are part of a Scotland-wide initiative called the True Acanta Project, which is led by an organisation called Good Life, Good Death, Good Grief. And we're really trying to record some of these sessions. We've been running, during the pandemic, we have been running some community workshops over Zoom, where we've had lots of really good collaborative conversations, where Lorna shared some information, and then we've had some great discussions. And you know, today we're really here to chat a bit about care home fees and some of the myths. Burst some of these myths that surround people's expectations and things that they believe are in place. So before we go into that, Lorna, would you just like to introduce yourself first?
So my name's Lorna Christine. I'm a partner at Thorntons Law in Dundee. I've specialised in wills, powers of attorney and asset protection for over 20 years now, and I've really enjoyed being part of these sessions and just having an informal chat with people about, you know, the issues that are concerning them and just giving them more information, really.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Lorna. And Michelle, would you just like to introduce yourself as well?
So my name's Michelle Donoghue. I've been part of the Say Something Dundee steering group for about 18 months, probably a bit longer. I'm a qualified counsellor with an interest in bereavement.
Yeah, thank you. And so as I said, we really just want to talk a little bit today about some of the myths that surround care home fees. I think lots of people have ideas and things that they think are real. And, you know, Lorna, do you want to just share a little bit about your experiences? We'll hopefully manage to, you know, just share a bit about what people ask you when they come in to speak with you.
Yeah, so I think care home costs is probably one of the biggest issues that we get asked about. It's a big concern for people. And I think a lot of that is due to maybe coverage in the media or even just chat amongst friends that maybe exposing to people about this issue. And it's certainly one that people feel strongly about. I think one of the first things to say is that not everyone will need care. There's this assumption that we're all going to end up in a care home, but it's actually 1 in 4 that will end up in care. And the average length of stay there is around about 18 months to 2.5 years. So those are the statistics. I think with care home planning, the difficult thing is you're planning for something, but you don't actually know what's going to happen to you, so you might not need it. And that's always very difficult because we don't know what the future holds for you and your family. We don't have a crystal ball. So it's quite a difficult thing to do. And you could spend money trying to plan for this and you might not actually need it. So I think what I'm trying to emphasize today, and we'll speak a bit more about it, is really that there's no one solution. There's no one size fits all. It's more a case of finding out, you know, the facts and the information, having a chat with your family about what you want to do. And at the end of the day, the answer may be that you're not going to do anything. You're just going to find out about it and stick with things as they are. I think what I would say that is if someone goes into care, when they go into care, they would have to fill in a form of assessment at that point. And that would list the assets that they have together with the income. And what the local authority is really looking to find out is if you're self-funding, if you're able to pay for yourself. Now, if you were to go into care, say you're a married couple, and maybe the husband's still at home and the wife is going into care, the local authority will not look at the house at that point, because I think people's big concern here is the house. You've worked hard for it. It's usually your asset. You know, you want to keep that. You want to have something to pass down to your children. That's the message that I hear from people when they come to see me. So if one of you goes into care and the other is still in the house, they don't look at the house at that point. There are also other exemptions. So for example, if you have a child that lives with you who's over 60, again, they don't look at the property. We are seeing lots of situations nowadays where maybe divorced children are coming back to live with their parents, you know, at that time. So sometimes these exemptions do apply. Another myth that we hear is that the local authority can force you to sell your house. Well, no, they can't. They can't force you to sell their house. You know, they can't come and just scoop it up and take it away from you. All they can do is send you a bill for your care if you are self-funding. And it's up to you then how you meet that bill. So you can have a think about with your family what the best way is of trying to meet that cost. Now, it could be that you decide as a family to rent your house out and to use the rental income to pay some of the care along with pension income. Or it could be as a family you decide, well, actually, you know what, we're going to sell the house, but we'll invest the money from the sale and we'll use the income from that and the income from the pensions to pay for the care. So just to emphasise again, the local authority cannot force you to sell your property. What they will do is send you a bill for the care, and you would have to think about how you would pay that. Also, just to mention that if you do go into care, there's a 12-week disregard for the first 12 weeks where they don't include the value of the property as well. And that's just to give you a bit of time as a family to think about what you're going to do. So
is that like a decision-making period so that does this really work for me?
Yeah, so just to mention again, if it's a couple and one goes into care and the other remains in the house, they don't look at the house at that point. If that second person passed away or went into care as well, that's when they would start to look at the property. But there is this 12-week disregard where they don't look at the house at that time. So you do have a bit of time to try and figure out what you are going to do. But people still worry about this, and it is still a concern for them. And I know they're concerned about the cost of it.
I think that's the thing that has come through in some of the sessions that we've run so far. The overwhelming thing is, am I going to lose my house as a result of having, to fund some sort of care home fees? It is such a worry for families. You can understand that, why that would be the case. But I think keep in perspective and actually think the stats of not everyone does need care is probably quite a useful thing.
I think what I hear a lot from people as well is, well, I'll just give it away. I'll just give my house to my kids. I think a lot of people have maybe heard of other people that have done that. I'll just put the house into my kids' names. Now you can do that. You can put your house into your children's names. There's nothing stopping you doing that. There's a lot of risk with that. There's a lot of risk for the person giving the asset away. So if you put your house into your children's names, what if your child becomes bankrupt through no fault of their own? What if they get divorced? What if they pass away? Have an accident and lose capacity? All these different things. You're then living in a property that you don't own. What would happen to you in that scenario? So if I was meeting with a client, I would always be concerned about them and how that would work. Also, there are various rules called the deprivation of capital rules. So the local authority can look at gifts that you've made, and if they think that you've deliberately deprived yourself of assets to avoid care home fees, then there are certain things they can do. Example, if you gave your house away and within 6 months you went into care, they can get that asset back, in that 6-month period. If it's over the 6 months, they can't get the asset back. But what they can say on paper is, well, actually, you gave that away to avoid care home fees. We're going to say on paper you still own that, so you still owe us the money, and you might not have the funds at that point. So giving assets away like that is a tricky one. What some people might want to think about, rather than giving assets away outright to children, is maybe giving assets to a trust. So that's a trust, a secret legal entity that would hold the asset, would hold the house. I suppose it's safer in a way because a trust can't go bankrupt, a trust can't get divorced. It sort of takes away some of those worries. But it is still ultimately a deprivation of assets because you're still giving the assets away. What we do see with a lot of people is they might put in place wills where you leave your half of the house not to your spouse but elsewhere, because what that means is if your spouse gets your assets and you've passed away and they're left and they go into care, they would then have all of the assets in their name, which could be used in care home fees. If you leave your half of the assets elsewhere, maybe to your children or to a trust, they're only ever going to have their own assets. So that's quite an effective way of dealing with things. To look at your will and to plan in that way. It's not as obvious as giving assets away. And also what you're doing is ensuring that whoever is left is not going to have all of the joint couple's assets in their name.
It's quite complicated, or it certainly seems like quite a complicated set of situations. And I mean, I guess it's all very much going to come down to very much individual sets of circumstances, as you said earlier on. You know, that it doesn't sound like there is one size fits all with any of this stuff. And, you know, I guess, you know, I think for anyone watching this, would be to like speak with their family. I think, you know, share their worries and have that conversation so that, you know, they understand what options might be available to them, and then perhaps seek advice.
Yeah, I think have a chat with your family about your concerns, and I think definitely seek advice for your situation.
Yeah.
Hear a lot from people about, oh yeah, but if I give my house away and survive 7 years, the local authority can't touch it. That's a very common myth.
Yeah.
Years are speaking about is actually in relation to inheritance tax. It's nothing to do with care home fees. So you can see how these things come about. I think definitely have a chat with someone, take advice, and then you would have to make a decision based on your circumstances. A lot of people do like the idea of the will option because it's kind of a middle ground. It's not as just giving, you know, assets to someone else, and it also maybe protects your situation a little bit more. But certainly I think the key thing would really be to take advice and to have a chat with your family.
Yeah.
Maybe that you simply decide that, you know, we've got money there, the chances of going into care are fairly slim. We're happy to pay for some of it, and you decide to do nothing. There are other families that feel very strongly about it and want to do something. And some families might feel, do you know what, we're going to do some planning just to ensure that we've done something to try and preserve our estates for our children. And I think that's where this comes from. You know, the adults in that situation want to have something to pass down to the children.
Yeah.
Children may not be quite so bothered. I think the children would be quite happy for the parents to be comfortable and looked
Absolutely.
after. Parents feel we want to have something to pass down to the kids.
So I mean, I guess that informed decision making is really key, though, isn't it? It's about being able to make decisions based on your own set of circumstances with an input, you know, as required from, you know, folks who really understand the legalities around all of this sort of.
Yeah, and I think as well that the law can change, so any advice you get will be correct as of
at that time.
But that 6-month rule that I mentioned, that could be altered, you know, in the future. No, we don't know what the future will hold. So I think it's just to be aware of all of the facts and to take proper advice. There are some things you can do if you want to do, but I think what I would say with all of that is, you know, take the proper advice, weigh up, you know, whether you want to go ahead with that or not. The family home is a big thing. It's usually an asset, and they do want to try and protect that at all if they can. And you know, if that's what they're wanting to do, you know, a solicitor would be happy to give you advice about that for your circumstances.
Well, I think that sounds really good. And I think that 7-year thing, it's all of these Chinese whispers and myths that you find yourself listening to, and you think it's maybe just not quite that. So I think it's really important you focusing on your own set of circumstances.
Yeah,
I think that's.
And I think as well about the exemptions, I think people often, you know, don't know about those as well. And it's only after speaking to someone that they you know, become aware and realise, oh, actually, so we'd have a bit of time to figure out what you know, and so on. And also, you know, we've had some situations in the past where maybe clients, for example, a client who doesn't have capacity and maybe doesn't have a power of attorney, and we're applying for a guardianship order, and they're in the care home already. The care home would just have to wait for payment until we got the guardianship order through. So, you know, that there's usually flexibility there. I think if you are doing any sort of planning, or if you're at the stage of going into care, I think the key thing is to keep the care home, you know, advised of what's going on. But if you are going to look at planning, you need to really be looking at it while you're healthy, because one of the local authorities probably going to look at is your state of health when you are gifted these assets away, put these arrangements in place.
That sounds great. It's really informative, and I hope people find this useful. And I mean, we as we mentioned earlier, we have been running some sessions across the year where we basically just open the floor for questions. And I think if people want to find out more about this and some of the other topics that we've covered, such as the wills, the power of attorney, and the guardianship, they'd be very welcome to sign up and join us on them, and more information on that is available on our Say Something Dundee Facebook page. So I guess all that remains is for me to thank you, Lorna, for joining us today, and Michelle for your input too. So it's really appreciated, and we're very grateful. So thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you.